So let's continue creating our profile curves for the MP3 player. And the tutorial is using a line here and there, and then is using this line kind of like as a helper to cast a tangent arc from this line. So I click on this line, go to the left point, and then I can click anywhere on the right side, and by moving around that point have an influence in how that arc is being created. This is also another good example for why those key point curves are actually very nice CAD-like drafting tools, because I only have to deal with 1 or 2 points, and then like here with this arc, it's 1 point, and by moving it, the arc is perfectly updated and always tangent to this line. However, I disagree on the idea to just only focus on 1/4 of your model and then delete the construction history, copy it over, and then mirror it over. Because Alias is a parametric modeler, we could much better actually simply build the upper half and then use the symmetry function to just complete the lower half of the model, because it's identically the same. So what I'm going to do now is, because I'm using the grid, I can, for example, now take this line, and I know my sketch I created in Illustrator is pretty much spot on. I can create, for example, another line pressing the Alt key here and then an Alt key there, and make sure it's 40 millimeters long. And if you would like to make sure that those two lines are really away from each other at the same distance from the z-axis, you could, for example, with the with the Alt key pressed, click 1 time and create a starting point, and then here click a second time, make a second point, and then a new line is being drawn, and you see that this line has a midpoint which is exactly at the z-axis. So that tells you those two lines are away from each other exactly the same distance. So then this we can delete. And then how do we draw now the curved top part? Well, that's not really difficult, because instead of using the arc that emerges from a line, we simply draw an arc with 3 control points. So the first one is the first point, then we set the midpoint that defines how much the arc bends, and then the last point is the stop point. And then I can go ahead and maybe on this height or on this grid level I'm going to start my first point, and because we're using a grid I can make use of it and maybe say 1, 2, 3, 4, so like 4 points away from this line. I'm using my Alt key, of course. I'm snapping to the grid constantly. And now I have to go back and try to follow this grid line. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe there. Okay. So also here again, we can draw a line, and we can draw a line to make sure that my sketch is really correct. And as you can see, those 2 points on the arc are on the same height, and also the line that I created in between has the midpoint and the z-axis, which means this line is really centered in my world, so that is good as well. Then we can delete this line, and you notice that I'm employing some very basic sketching styles to simply measure my objects. And then maybe I'm actually trying to guess the curvature a little bit, maybe like this, and then I'm going actually to move the complete object with my right mouse button up. So maybe like there. Okay, so this way, for example, we have then recreated the left and the right side and the upper arc for the MP3 player.